books on the road for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book One Mile at a Time, no other than Mr. Edward Rahill.
Well, thank you, Daniel. Thank you to your audience. Um, the book the reason why I'm here and the reason why I'm so grateful to be here is I have written a book over the last 2 years, which is a kind of a memoir of the last great American cross-continental road race, um, as well as my understanding of my early family and my family's journey through time and the adventure I like to call life when I look back at it. Uh, this started. I'm a very late in my career as an author. My career has been in the corporate environment, and I've been generally graced with the fact that I actually became had the opportunity to rise to a chief executive officer of a major electric utility, which I felt was what I'm very grateful for. Uh, that's something. The reason why I'm saying is because one thing I've learned in life is that um, a man character is his destiny. Meaning you will you will succeed in life if you maintain character over the long term, but you can never forecast the future, and you can't tell that it's not going to fall apart tomorrow. But at the end of the day, I decided to write a book for a very special reason. I have four exceptional children. I was a corporate executive, and one of the challenges I had as far as being a parent, I was raised by a previous generation, my grandmother, who had experienced the early 20th century and the Great Depression, and she imprinted on me the importance of being well, we'll say, a career-minded, good provider, because that's the only way you can take care of people that you care about. Now, remember where she's coming from. I mean, pretty dire periods in time where families were destitute, having to leave their homes. And so I did focus that in my life and ended up developing a very successful career. But as I got older, I realized I had not expressed to my children everything I learned in my life and the life before I met their mother. So that's how the book got started. It started out as a letter to my four children, and it just evolved due to encouragement from some other professionals I asked to proofread it, that this needs to become a novel and it needs to become a screenplay and a movie. And so, what I have done, my typical new venture attitude of taking on life, my goal is to take this book as far as I can. My goal is it's a message I want to leave the world and my children when I leave, and it's something that I'm very hopeful and will do my best effort to negotiate a screenplay and become one of the producers of this movie, hopefully starting at the end of this year. Now, that's a goal. You have to have goals, or you're not going to get anywhere. So that's the start of it. Um,
Definitely. Mr. Edward Rahill, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. What does the title One Mile at a Time mean to you personally?
um, when you find yourself in impossible situations or apparently impossible situations, you have I don't care how brave or confident you are, you start facing fear, you start facing self-doubt, you start facing all the things that could go wrong. And you begin, in that case, to break down and even start betraying the things that you believe in life. My grandmother who raised me said one of the most devastating emotions a human being can feel is fear, because it does disable everything about you. It reduces you to a survival mode as opposed to uh, you know an altruistic thinking mode about how to solve the problem. So 1 mile of my time comes down to the fact that I've had several events like this in my life, and the major one was the last great cross continental automobile race across the United States from Boston to San Diego, 3,200 miles. And within the book, I play out what happened. But I went from a situation where I had given up in last place, broken down, to was able to find a way with courage and self and reflection on those people who came before me that taught me this. And I remember when I got back in that car and fired it up, I said to myself, 1 mile at a time. Had 2,000 miles to go. Last place. Every police force in the United States from Boston to California was looking out for us. And I just basically put the fear beside and let it go and start focusing in one moment, one car, 1 mile at a time. And not to be a spoiler, but you'll discover in the book how I did it. We did it with my partner. I ended up winning that race by 10 minutes and set a new world's record that still stands today. No one has ever beaten the time that Tim and I did in crossing that country in what I'm calling a true race. Understand, and I'll get a little bit into it operates at several levels. I'll talk a little bit about history here. But this was a cross-country race that was part of American history. The first got its inkling in 1860 with the United States Postal Pony Express, which was an attempt to ride across, by not a race, it was an attempt to get across the United States as fast as you could to deliver the mail. That fell short and broke up with the Civil War, which was a very unfortunate event in history. And then post that, the world was a different world, and within that period, you had an evolution of a new type of person in the plains of the United States we called cowboy. These people did not really exist prior to this, but afterwards, a lot of unemployed men from the North and the South had nothing to do, and they just got their own horse, their own saddle, their own rifle, and they would ride from ranch to ranch, from location to location, and try to get a job. And there were loners. But part of this culture, and this horse culture, was basically the desire to have some adventure. And they would start challenging each other to group races. And eventually those races got to be up over 1,000 miles on horseback. And the last great horse race that ran in the United States, in North America, was the Great Cowboy Race of 1893, where the destination was Chicago, and Buffalo Bill Cody, showman he is, was waiting at the end and sponsoring it and awarding a gold-plated Colt 45 pistol to the winner, and he did that. And that event was covered not just in North America, but it had heavy coverage in Europe, and became a very big event. But it turned out to be the last event for the following reason. It was the advent and the transition of the world in the West from cowboys to and cattle drives to railroads and going to cities with that technology, and then barbed wire. So the cowboy began to very quickly die out in the 1890s as a profession. However, if we go back and you find this out in the book, because I spent a lot of time in history on it, this was still something within the imagination of the American public. So much so, not only a few years later, there was a group of gentlemen in New York City who challenged each other to an automobile race from New York to Portland. And that race was the first cross-continental endurance road race in history in North America. And they basically, a gentleman by Little Milford won the race in 44 days. So it took them 44 days to drive from New York to Portland. And the amazing thing of it, I'm trying to capture for the public reading the book, trying to understand why are we talking about this. And I took the time and went out to Oregon and you know, drove the state parks and found the twin monuments that the state of Oregon erected in honor of these two gentlemen. And in my book, in my forward of my book, you'll have me there with in a picture in front of them. But it gives you an idea the fact that if a state legislature was so impressed with this that they would actually vote, build, spend, and build it. It gives you an idea that the culture back then looked at this type of event as being part of something that captured their imagination. All right.
All
Um,
right.
that was the beginning of the 20th century, and there was a massive continuation of this type of activity. And I outlined through the book of how it went through the 20s and 30s with a gentleman by the name of Edwin Baker, who basically was given the name by the New York Times after coming into New York uh, Times Square with a 100,000 people are cheering for him, calling him the Cannonball Baker. And so you got a picture of that 1930s, that type of activity. Why? Because he drove across the United States in a car. I mean, I'm serious. That's what it became so impressive to the United that Dwight D. Eisenhower, who ended up Grand Commander in World War II of the Allies, became so concerned as he started learning about it that he convinced the Defense Department or the War Department at the time to give him 20 tanks, cars, and trucks, and they did a test on how long it would take them to drive from San Francisco to Washington D.C. The whole country was fixated about the ability of getting across the continent fast. For him, it was for national defense. For the public, it was the adventure of doing something that in the past was never thought doable.
Mr. Ed, congratulations for holding that record until now. What lesson do you want readers to take away from your story?
I think the book. I'm not. I'm very proud of the book. I became more proud of it a year after I wrote it or got it when I started getting a lot of feedback. And one of the things that that people were telling me it was that it's the face of adversity in a situation where you don't think you can make it is the time you need to start looking in yourself to find what within your past might help you get through this. For me, it was the continuation of my family, raised by my grandmother. In the book, my grandma's huge in this book. She was, her mother came from Ireland at 14 in the 1880s and 90s. Um, never because the family couldn't feed them, and basically she never to see her siblings again. She was a maid on for the rest of her life on a mansion in Delaware Avenue, Buffalo, New York. And my grandmother had to leave school at fifth grade to help feed the family. And one of the things that her first job was to go walk along the railroad yards in South Buffalo to pick up coal. And she said that was a good job. And so there was a whole bunch of things in her life, losing her husband with 4 kids and not having a means to support them, how she gets through that. And then as she became a tremendous success in life as a human being, being elected as New York's chairman of March of Dimes was the polio charity at that time. But I ended up living with her, and she took the time to try to imprint upon me what she had learned about life to overcome those moments when you want to give up. And we all have them. And the point that I'm saying is that no one thought the situation that I was in this race, I even stood a chance. And there were people saying, I found out later, a number of people are saying he doesn't have what it takes to do it. And so I guess what I'm saying, I walk you through what happened. And very much of what happened was calling back on my past, on her, and the generations before me. And what I leave with the book is the second level, is what I've discovered about life. There's so much we have to learn from the people of the past. And so I do an analogy in the book, and we can close it with this. Um, life, in my experience, I've come to believe the human race is living in a long-term relay race. That's a race in track and field where groups of runners, run a section and then they hand off the baton to the other, and the race goes on. And the point, what I've learned, is that life is like a relay race. That there are runners before you who received their baton from the past and ran their race, their life as hard as they could. It was all about, could they make it better for them, make things better. But at the end of the day, the reason why we as a people are better as a society, why we continue to have the chance to become better, is if we take the lessons of the past, receive that baton at the starting line when that your parents or grandparents are handing it off, and then you go run that life as fast as you can, and you do the best you can. But there's going to come time that, and there's four turns in a quarter mile. You're going to come off that fourth turn. You're going to look at that finish line, and there's going to be somebody standing there that hopefully is the next generation. And you have, I think, a responsibility as a human being to hand off your knowledge, wisdom, good and bad, to that person so they can make the next stride up the hill for we as a people. And I only became a chief executive officer. I only hold this world record because I am convinced the people who came before me taught me how to do it.
Totally agree with you. Mr. Ed, what advice would you give someone who's facing a long, difficult journey in your or in their own?
Okay. Can I just can I just say what popped into my mind? Because I have two or three things. But
Yes, go ahead.
yeah, Stephen Jobs, who founded Apple, and then got it to a success, and then he got fired, and then they brought him back, and he decided he's not going to make computers. He was going to make computers, but that wasn't the main business. Can you still
Yes.
see me there?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, Basically, he said he's going to try to do a phone, an iPhone. And it was a lot of people going after him because BlackBerry and a lot of phones were already out there. And in the middle of an interview, and this is going to sound a little crass, but he was being genuine. Are you willing to take the second chance on your career and lose it all? He said, because you're betting the whole company on this phone. And he sat there and looked at the guy and said, I can't remember the interviewer's name, but he said something to the effect, you know, I've learned that fear, again, he talked about fear being the one thing that has only feelings could ever stop him is fear. But then he says, I sit back and I look at the big picture. I look at my life. I look where I am, where I came from. Remember where he came from and where the world's going. And the final thing he said, let's call the interview Daniel. He said, Daniel, there's nothing this world can do to me to hurt me that death won't fix. Now, that sounds kind of crass a little bit, but think about what he's saying. And if you go to Churchill's quote, in the face of the blitz of trying to hang out, he said, victory is fleeting, defeat is not permanent. It's only the will to carry on that counts. And I think those are the things that I try to capture in my book. I have a lot of quotes from different famous people about that. But those are the things that if you can overcome fear, they're not going to stop you.
Definitely. Totally agree, Mr. Ed. And what would be your short term and long term goals in writing?
um, Basically, okay, very good. Short-term goals is to get my book sales up. I'm hiring people. I'm interviewing people, marketing coordinator, uh, um, another person to help organize, and we're going to start doing a major blitz. What I'm doing is, because I'm a new author late in my career, the major publishing houses I would not really relate to me on this. not thinking I had much to offer. So after a number of months of trying to figure out how to get them to support me, I just looked at what they do, and I'm hiring my own publishing house. Yeah, I got my own editors, my books. I've got marketing people coming in, I got people with Rolodexes, and I'm going to start making calls, and I'm going to start getting on more podcasts. That's why I'm grateful to you, by the way, to try to push this message. And what my goal is to try to get it out in the general population as much as possible. I'm trying to get sales up this summer for a reason, because my legal team has told me that if I really want to go into the West Coast and I really want to sit down with a couple of the movie studios and you want to be a producer with them on this movie, you have to have sales. He says because they're going to look at it and see how the book is responding to the public. And so my whole goal right now is to take that first step in that journey, to try to start explaining to people why the book is special, why it's something that I think will stand the test of time, and it's a lesson on how you can face life when it doesn't work out that well.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Edward, and I'm inviting you to my other podcast, Movie 101 Review, once this book will be a movie itself or
I,
a series itself.
or so I got two things going. One is I like to be in a movie with a decent producer, Ron Howard or somebody like that, who really understands the concepts I'm talking about. I'm not interested in any producers that are working on the Avengers because they don't have a clue about all we just talked about. But then I'm working with with some of my people. The plan, if we get the movie, we're going to go to Netflix and try to do a series. Kind of, it'll be a little more fiction. My book is true story. I have 70 newspaper articles verifying everything I'm saying in this book in the back. But I'm willing. I would let a producer who would want to hold true to the messages. I would delight to take to Netflix or Amazon and do a series on it. And
Yes.
so I mean, the right now I'll tell you, we haven't talked about the car race. I've had two producers try to approach me already, and my lawyers turned them down. They want to buy the book because of the race. I mean, this race
Oh.
set a world's record: 35 hours and 46 minutes, 3,200 miles, with almost 5 hours of delays in the middle of the race. I mean, that it's never been done before. You have some lone roofs that people that go, like during COVID, we got somebody who drove from New York to LA and said they set a new record. The only problem is the only evidence he had was his phone camera. So what I'm saying. Where the people, when I can talk about real racing, I'm talking about. I had NBC News at the start of my race, and I had 4 TV stations in San Diego at the ends. I mean, this is all documented, so it's not a. I think it's important to understand. And on top of that, it was the race. I averaged from St. Louis to San Diego, 104 miles an hour, including stops and delays and traffic. And from St. Louis um, to Adrian, Texas, just about 130. And so it's something, a speed that I tell you right now, I still don't know how I did it. But when you're young, you're crazy. You can do these things.
Yes.
And that's something that the movies want. They want the next Ford versus Ferrari, the race centric thing. And by my selling the book, I get to argue that you have to have a second level, talking about the morals and the lessons learned, how you deal with adversity. So if I get my book sales up, I'm going to have a better chance of getting a movie out there. They can do all the racing they want and make it as fun as they want, but I want the story to be true.
Totally credible that will empower people all over the world. So, Mr. Ed, what part of 1 mile at a time you are most proud of?
Now remember, this is memoir. I'm going to tell you what I'm most proud of, because it'll give you a sample of what I'm talking about: adversity in life and fear. When I was an executive officer at a company, I was in finance and planning, and the company was going through a series quickly. They were going through pretty substantial layoffs, and they were offering early retirement to people, and if they didn't retire, and that would get them as if for the rest of their lives health care. They didn't take it. They got 9 months, and they're done. And when you're talking to somebody in their 50s, I'm sorry, you're not going to get another job with health care. And I had to make a choice in there after having been, interviewed and signing a non-disclosure document and told that with everyone else in the room that we will not only be fired but prosecuted if we let anyone know that they're on that list. And I had a gentleman I'm working at, and this may not sound ethical to some people, but the point was he was in his 50s. He had a wife who was an invalid, needed the health care to stay alive. And it's something my grandmother told me that if you ever come across somebody in desperate need and you have the ability and you have the opportunity to do something about it, you have to do it. And so I made the choice the night before, put my job on the line to let him know he had to resign. And that's not part of it's one chapter in my book, but he asked me what I'm most proud of, that I had the courage to do that.
Totally agree with
Because
you,
I never
Mr.
got
Ed.
any, I would not, by telling him this and helping him out, I had nothing to gain and everything to lose. But it was the right thing to do.
It's your own call, and we congratulate you
Thank
for
you.
doing that, for doing the courage of something else, and really empower people all over the world. So before we wrap up our discussion for today, Mr. Ed, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, in
Yes.
its fifth season, people, fifth season, with Chef Alessandro, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. Please do listen to our latest episode. We are reading our letter senders all over the world. So please do listen. Food 101, wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Ed, what next for you after 1 mile at a time? Are you planning another book?
Um, I'm getting a lot of pressure right now from people who see the potential for me to do that. But I've always been, my whole life has always been never look back at what you accomplished, see what else you can do. Uh, I'm seriously considering now with the change in American politics and the education system really being revolutionized here, where a lot of the money and the power is going to the parents and not the school districts and the Department of Education. There's a big movement here for private education. When I mean private, it's education that doesn't necessarily no longer does somebody who wants to set up a school that's legitimate be denied the proper tax dollars for the kids they're serving. I'm looking at starting exploring, and let's use the word exploring because exploring is a real word. Exploring is setting up a series of classical education, uh, 12, K through 12 education systems that focuses in on Western culture and what I consider to be some of the highest points of honor for American civilization that we have experienced in the past, along with some of the most awful. And we can all point to the number of times in the 20th century that happened. But I really would like to bring a sense of moral values, commitments, and understanding their history. If right now, that's what I think I'm really focusing the lesson of the book. Understand where you came from, the good and the bad. But the only reason you're here in this classroom and not sitting, in a cave somewhere is because every generation made one step more to try to become better. And everything in your life, your cell phones, this conference we're having, it's all technology that somebody lived before us put together. We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for people in the past. And so I would like them to understand so that they sense they have that. I would like them to leave the education to go to college with a sense of duty that they have a responsibility to live their life to the fullest. Yes, enjoy it, but to be productive and learn something. And then they have the responsibility to pass it on at the end. I want them to continue I want to continue the continuum of the human race.
Mr. Edward M. Rahill, thank you so much for inspiring the world through 1 mile at a time. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your book itself?
Yes, my webpage is edwardrahill.com, EDWARDRAHILL. And from there, you'll have some notes of where the book can be purchased. Once I bring on my marketing coordinator, I'm going to step up the activity and make it easier. I currently have some social media on X. I have social media on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and now we're moving into TikTok. Under those, if you type in author Edward Rahill on those, you should come up to my social media. But I'm looking forward to getting somebody in to help me put a plan together so we can really knock it out of the park and enjoy it, and hope people enjoy it too.
Yes.
So thank you very much for asking me that.
No worries, Mr. Edward, because this podcast is created for you. People, let's support Mr. Edward M. Rahill, because if we support him, more and more and more empowering books to come.
And the book is available on Amazon.
Yes, and where your books are sold. So, Mr. Edward, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor.
Yes. Bodycom people, see you soon.
Bye-bye.